How's it going, guys? This is Pete from the FreedomInGod channel. So this is an updated video on one of the previous videos I made regarding the evidences for a worldwide flood. Some of the clips got blocked and distorted, so I decided just to make a brand new video on it. So was there a worldwide flood as described in the book of Genesis? And what evidence is there supporting this flood? Because surely there has to be evidences, as it was one of the biggest catastrophe the world has ever faced. And I believe the reason why God used the flood was to remind us of His judgment, so that even today we can still see the effects of it, and we definitely do. Before I show you 5 evidences for a worldwide flood, first let me answer some questions I have faced. Where did the water come from and where did it go? Was the water above Mount Everest? And did all the water come from rain? The Bible explains in Genesis 7 verse 11 that all the fountains of the great deep broken up and the windows of heaven were opened. So most of the water came from underneath the crust of the earth, and that's why we have all these fault lines around the world. Most of the water is still here. 70% of the world is covered in water and only 3% is habitable for humans. And as the mountains rose, the valleys sank down. New continental land masses bearing new mountain chains of folded rock strata were uplifted from below the globe encircling waters that had eroded and leveled the pre-flood topography, while large deep ocean basins were formed to receive and accommodate the floodwaters that then drained off the emerging continents. That is why the ocean is so deep and why there are folded mountain ranges. If the Earth's entire surface were leveled by smoothing out the topography of not only the land surface, but also the surface on the ocean floor, the waters of the ocean will cover the Earth's surface to a depth of 2.7 kilometers. So Mount Everest was not there before the flood. After, the mountains rose, and that's why we find marine fossils on top of Mount Everest, because it was once under sea level. I will leave links in the description where more of these questions are answered, like how did the plants survive the flood, how big was the ark, and how many animals could fit on it, etc. But for now, let's get back to the 5 evidences supporting a worldwide flood. Once again, there are many more reasons than 5, and I encourage you to look more into this. So, let's begin. The fact that we find fossils at all supports a worldwide flood and rapid burial. We find extensive fossil graveyards and exquisitely preserved fossils. For example, billions of nautiloid fossils are found in the layer within the Redwall limestone of Grand Canyon. This layer was deposited catastrophically by a massive flow of sediment of mostly lime sand. The chalk and coal beds of Europe and the United States and the fish and the insects and other fossils all around the world testify of a catastrophic destruction and burial. Some fossils have even been found while the animal was still giving birth, like the ichthyosaur. Also, some fossils have been found of animals still eating that could only happen with rapid burial. Fossilized jellyfish have also been found that must have been rapidly buried because their soft bodies float in decay within hours of death. The top mile of the Earth's surface is covered with sedimentary layers, full of fossils that could not have formed by slow and gradual process, and could only have happened with rapid burial caused in a worldwide flood. We find fossils of sea creatures in layers covering all the continents. For example, we find marine fossils in the walls of Grand Canyon. Fossilized shellfish are even found in the Himalayas. Clams in the closed position have been found on top of Mount Everest. Clams open when they die, yet these are still closed, which explain these clams as being buried rapidly. The fossilized sea creatures and plants found in rock layers thousands of feet above sea level are thus silent testimonies to the ocean waters that flooded over the continents, carrying billions of sea creatures which were then buried in the sediments these ocean waters deposited. This is how billions of marine creatures were buried in rock layers all over the world. The fact that we find so many sedimentary layers all over the earth supports a worldwide flood. If you took these sediments found on the earth and added water, it will automatically lay it down in layers. This is known as hydrologic sorting. Many of these hard rocky sedimentary layers are folded. So how could a series of sedimentary layers fold without fracturing? The only way is for all these sedimentary layers to have been laid down in rapid succession and then be folded while still soft and pliable. Rocks do not normally bend. They break because they are hard and brittle. But in many places we find whole sequence of strata that were bent without fracturing, indicating that all these rock layers were rapidly deposited and folded while still wet and pliable before final hardening. One of the most strongest pieces of evidence for a worldwide flood is the existence of polystrate fossils. They are found all over the earth, even in and around coal seams. They are often in the form of fossil trees that were buried upright, which often cross multiple layers of strata, such as sandstone, limestone, and even coal beds. They range in size from small rootlets to trees over 80 feet long. Some atheists believe that all these layers are different ages and millions of years old, yet we find trees connecting these layers, and I doubt they were standing there for millions of years while these sediment formed around them. The only explanation of these polystrate fossils is rapid burial in a worldwide flood, because they are found all over the world. Also, one of the strongest evidences for a worldwide flood which annihilated all people on earth except for Noah and his family is the ubiquitous presence of flood legend in the folklore of people groups around the world. And the stories are all so similar. Local geography and cultural aspects may be present, but they all seem to be telling the same story. Over the years, experts have collected more than 250 of these stories, ranging from all over the world from China to Africa. Putting them all together, the story will read something like this. Once there was a worldwide flood, sent by God to judge the wickedness of man. But there was one righteous family which was forewarned of the coming flood. They built a boat on which they survived the flood along with the animals. As the flood ended, their boat landed on a high mountain from which they descended and repopulated the whole earth. Anthropologists will tell you that a myth is often the faded memory of a real event. Details may have been added, lost, or obscured in the telling and retelling, but the kernel of truth remains. When two separate cultures have the same myth in their body of folklore, their ancestors must have either experienced the same event, or they both ascended from a common ancestral source, which itself experienced the event. The only credible way to understand the widespread similar flood legends is to recognize that all people living today, even though separated geographically, linguistically, and culturally, have descended from a few people who survived a real worldwide flood. But, of course, this is not the view of most modern scholars. They prefer to believe that something in our commonly evolved psyche forces each culture to invent the same imaginary flood legend with no basis in real history. Instead of scholarship, this is willful ignorance of the fact that the world that then was, being overflowed with water, perished in 2 Peter 3:5. Also, the Ice Age fits perfectly with the Bible, and I encourage you to look more into it. There will be links in the description below. Just look outside at the world. You can see there was a catastrophe at one point and the world was destroyed by water. This is not the world that Adam and Eve saw. This is a junkyard compared to the existence they live in. But the good news is, one day God will restore it back to the Garden of Eden conditions, if you are saved through Jesus Christ. So, these are the 5 evidences I find compelling, but once again there are many more reasons than 5. I try not to make these videos too long. Thank you all for watching, guys, and remember, there is only true freedom in God. Have a blessed day.